sit down with whoever makes the decisions in the band, which I'm assuming is Ed, and ask why.
Exactly. And our last letter, number 21, comes from Devon Miller. Love the podcast, guys. Each episode makes my workday go by so much quicker, and I wanted to shed some light on a few points in this last episode, number 50. Number 1, the point about why they use Simmons drums on the 5150 album. I remember reading an interview with Eddie Van Halen back in the early 90s, and I believe Eddie said he wasn't happy with it either. They did it because it was the first album with Sammy, and they wanted to record the band live as much as possible. 5150 Studios did not have a separate drum room to isolate the drums at the time, so they used the Simmons drums to reduce the amount of crosstalk between the microphones. That way they could play together and record the basic tracks as a group. This was more important for the band to become a tight musical group before they were on stage in front of an audience. And the point of no videos for the 5150 album, I remember reading an interview with Eddie Van Halen in one of the guitar magazines where he said they wanted the public to see the new lineup live in concert and not in a video on MTV. Eddie's feelings toward Michael Anthony. Well, I think Michael Anthony's a nice guy and he has a happy attitude, drives Eddie nuts. It makes him jealous and a little bit paranoid. Eddie probably doesn't understand how someone could possibly be like that. And I do think that Eddie resents the fact that Michael got writing credit and publishing money when he didn't contribute much of anything to that area. On the point of not using outside writers, wasn't Michael McDonald brought up to write the song I'll Wait? And finally, the reason I heard they led with the song You Really Got Me was because before the first album was released, Eddie played a cover of You Really Got Me for one of the members of the band Angel at a party. And Angel then tried to record their own version and get it out ahead of the release of Van Halen 1. But when Warner Brothers and Ted Templeman got wind of what was going on, they rushed You Really Got Me out as a single to beat Angel's version. I looked for the original sources for these interviews, but I couldn't find them. Anyway, keep up the great podcast. Can't wait for the next episode. And keep the legacy of the mighty Van Halen alive. Devon Miller. The Simmons drums. A lazy excuse, if you ask me.
But you know what? I don't buy that reason. Because 5150 Studios were set up for the 1984 album.
Right.
And while Al did use Simmons drums on 1984, they were not nearly as prominent as they were on 5150.
No. He definitely didn't use all Simmons drums on that album.
No, he didn't use all Simmons drums on 1984.
Right.
I'm just saying they were used, but they were not nearly used as much as they were on 5150.
Right.
So if the reason is, well, we wanted the band to play together and we didn't have a big enough drum room and that's why we used the Simmons drums. Well, you must have had a drum room that was big enough to hold Simmons drums and acoustic drums because that's what you did on 1984.
Right.
So I really don't buy that excuse.
That's true. Well, they're also in the video thing is weird. Like, we want you to see the band live. But here's the thing. That's great. You want to see the band live. No problem. But do you have any idea what you're giving up by not giving MTV a video in 1986? You're giving up free promotion from a business standpoint. I can't believe that Warner Brothers didn't make them do videos. I mean, it's like...
Well, it's not free. I mean, you got to pay to make the video.
Of course you got to pay to make the video, Dave, but in 1986, to not have a video on MTV is insane. I mean,
I agree with you. It was a really ballsy move.
Especially
and they got away with it.
You're right. But especially when they're a band that is known for putting out some of the best videos. And here's the other thing. Like, MTV would be salivating over the next Van Halen video and probably would play it to death. I mean, look at how many times they played that damn Blue Angels video. I mean,
that's because there wasn't any other video
I know
to play.
I know that, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, look, that's not even technically a Van Halen video, and they played the hell out of that. I mean, like, they were crying for. Then when, like I said before, when Alive Without a Net came out, they actually took that and spliced it up and made their own videos for 5150. I remember when they did that.
Yep.
So they could have videos from 5150 in rotation. Love Walks In, Best of Both Worlds. Why can't this be Love? They used a different version. They used that other one that they used on the award show or whatever. They broadcasted live from an arena on an award show. They used that one. And then Dreams, they used the Blue Angels video. But the way they got away with, like, not doing the videos and keeping the band name as Van Halen, I mean, they got away with so much. It was amazing. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they pulled it off. I mean, the album was great, so I guess that was the reason why. Anyway, that wraps up our mailbag segment. And we are on to our deep dive discussion on the Balanced albums, followed by our interview with mixer Mike Fraser, and he was the one who helmed the mixing board for the Balance album. We get into a whole discussion with him, and we also interview Glen Wexler, creator and photographer for the Balance album. So we got a whole basket of Balance for you guys, and it's all coming up next. Take a listen.
A little bit of the outdoors. It's has nothing to do with music. The people that I climb with live out of the backs of their station wagons for $3,000 a year. They're purists, and you don't find a whole lot of that in the music biz, and I take a lot of inspiration from that. Keeps me honest.
Author Greg Renoff is back with a new book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. The new biography of the record producer Ted Templeman, who went on to produce Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, Van Morrison, Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar, and more. The book, which runs $19.95, is being released on April 21st, 2020, and it's currently available for pre-orders at Amazon.com. From the man who brought you Van Halen Rising comes Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music, written by Templeman as told to Greg Renoff. Available for only $19.95 for pre-order at Amazon.com. Order it today.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Damon Johnson from Brother Kane and Black Star Riders, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained. Crank it up.
If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
You know, there are so many convolutions to what's going on with Van Halen, and we start to get real serious about it, and I think this music's way too important to take so seriously.
Okay, Dave. Well, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of Balance. Believe it or not, it's been 25 years since the last Sammy Hagar helmed Van Halen album. Sammy's last record, it came out in January of 1995. It's hard to believe it was that long ago. In fact, it was exactly the 24th of January. Now, the interesting thing about this album is, as we all know, the band was in inner turmoil at this point. So let's review. Right around this time, they lost their manager, the guy who helmed everything, Ed Loeffler, which was formerly Sammy Hagar's manager, and became Van Halen's manager when Sammy entered the band. And boy, did that shake up everything. It kind of let the lock off the gate, if you want to say it. And they ended up getting new management, which was with Rush's old manager, Ray Daniels. Or I shouldn't say old manager, their manager, I should say. And I believe he also managed Extreme. I wonder what that means. But anyway.
I wonder whatever happened to those guys.
Well, apparently Sammy did not vote for him, and he was voted out. He was outvoted, rather. And they ended up with Ray, and there was issues from the start. We all know that Ed and Al were not doing well physically. Ed was having hip problems. Al was having problems with his neck. They were not in great shape. Well, they took some time off. This was a really big break between Van Halen albums. This was a huge break. So the last album came out in the summer of 91. This came out in the winter of 1995. So there was quite a jump there. 3.5 years, I think, in total there.
that they...
You're talking about a break between studio albums.
Yeah, between studio albums, yes. Well, let's see, one...
Right, okay, because they had the live
three.
album release between those two,
No,
right?
No, of course, yeah, but I'm talking about in terms of making new music. The live album was sort of a holdover, and they ended up doing a tour for that, but this was a long time, if you consider the time. Nowadays, bands wait 3.5 years to make an album. It's not that big a deal. Back then, they were sort of on a track. I mean, they came out with something in 84, and 86, and 88, and then 91, and then it was 1995. So that's kind of a bigger jump. So anyway, they enlisted Bruce Fairbairn, who was the kind of the opposite of Andy Johns. Andy Johns was the producer for the for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album in 1991. They demoed 20 songs, and they started in May of 1994, and it was in the heat of grunge, Dave. They were still survived. Van Halen survived grunge. The working title of this album was called The Club, and it was sort of a nickname for Ed Loeffler's house, which they used to call Le Club Le Fleur, as a joke, I guess. And they also had the working title The Seventh Seal, which is the opening track on the album, but they decided to go with Balance, which apparently was a leftover title from the OU812 session. The album is beyond triple platinum. And apparently Bruce, who is known to work at his studio in Canada, came to 5150 to work with Ed, but then he ended up doing some vocals in Canada. Sammy had to go up there to do the vocals for 5 songs. It was recorded between May of 94 to September 2nd of 1994, and then I guess they took all that time to prep and get ready for the marketing, and at that point, you're either pushing out product for Christmas or, you know what, let's wait for the new year type of thing. And their attitude was, let's wait for the new year. Apparently Warner Brothers had said something along the lines of, we have good luck with bands who drop albums in the beginning of the year. That's when 1984 came out, so they figured they'd go on that momentum. Strangely enough, they released a single like around Christmas time, which I never understood that. Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, which is kind of strange. But the album was released and hit number 1, right to the top of the charts. It was double platinum by the time it was out for 2 months. By the time we got to late March, it was already double platinum. I believe it was like almost triple platinum by May. It came out on CD and cassette, and they also apparently had a different order, a track listing order from the CD to the cassette. There was some switching around there, which was interesting.
Right.
Yeah, we all know about the twins on the cover. It was the same kid, and we'll have more detail on that in our interview with the artist, which is coming up. Alex described the cover as a duality of a person, kind of the struggle between good and evil. I sort of realized, believe it or not, Dave, after giving this album a close listen again, that there is a real light and dark back and forth with the tracks. There are dark tracks and there are light tracks, and I guess that sort of goes with the balance theme, but I didn't even realize that until I analyzed it 25 years later. What did you think?
That's interesting. I would say that, it was 4 years between their studio albums. And when you think about it, Nirvana had come and gone.
Oh, yeah.
That space of time.
Oh, yeah.
Just to give everybody like a sense of what was going on.
Yeah.
Grunge or post-grunge or whatever you want to call it at that time was in full swing.
Right.
And bands like Van Halen, quite frankly,
did
not have a good shot of doing well.
95
right?
was a dark time. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the fact that Van Halen's album went to number 1 and went multi-platinum is really miraculous when you think about it. Because most of the other bands from the 80s had died a quick death. They couldn't buy themselves out of a paper box.
It was like they all hit a wall at once.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was fast and it was sudden.
Fast.
But Van Halen somehow... they rose above that.
Right. Absolutely. They were bulletproof, which just goes to show you the band was of a certain caliber. I've always said this. They're never really to be considered in that hair band group. Nothing against that group. I happen to love that group. I love all those bands. But
Van Halen is of another caliber, like AC/DC. They are in the classic rock bands. Like, they really are up there with some of the classic rock bands. And, you know, that's what they deserve to be treated as. And sometimes I think people like to push them in that other basket, but they're really not. They're a 70s rock band. They were based in the 70s. They started in late 72. They made